everyone, and welcome back. Appreciate you joining me here today on this special edition of the show where we are going to be breaking down some insider reports as to when this virus really may come to an end. And it is my job as someone that is a health researcher and clinician to look at behind the scenes work. So sometimes I'm privy to information that not a lot of other people are, because I have a lot of colleagues that are MDs working inside of hospitals. I get to see labs from around the world as to what's going on. I have a lot of colleagues in this profession that are, again, in Australia, in New Zealand, all over Europe, Canada, the US, you name it. So I have a pretty big base to speak to. But also the nice thing is I know people in the business-based world. Many of my private wellness clients and people are also in that space. And what I've learned is that behind the scenes, there are many people talking about and already predicting and may have more information than we do as to when businesses, the world, things will go back to normal. And I wanted to share that with you today. I don't have any necessarily proof of this, but all of this can actually be verified and looked up. So although I could never give you an exact date, what I am looking at is based on people that employ tens of millions of people, like tens of millions of people. Here's the plan for when they're going to be back at work. So I was very interested in this topic, and I started to look into it more. The closest thing that I could find is a Forbes-based article, which is actually pretty in-depth, and I'll link that up here today at stephencabral.com/1797, as well as, again, some business insiders that shared this information with me too. So I'm going to give you all of the different companies, when they are going to have their workers come back to working in the offices. And I hope that by listening to the different months inside of 2021, you'll begin to know when we will, so-called go back to normal. And it's my hope that we do go back to pre-pandemic. Now, I know that a lot of people don't want that for various reasons. And again, I respect everyone's reasons. I really do. So, but we have to understand, we have to look at this as what it's done to the psyche of our global family, right? Not just our community and the people that we work with, our own family, not being able to see them for the holidays, like all sorts of different things. But what about the interactions that were happening inside of work, at live events, like the other part of our life that we don't necessarily have right now? There is a void in many people's lives. There's a void in many children not being in school right now and being able to see their friends. There's a void with a lot of parents having their kids home and having to make that work where they don't have their own autonomy, right? Kids have their own autonomy in school. Parents had their own autonomy by the kids were off at school for a few hours a day, and they don't have that anymore. There has been a real big change. That will have been a full year, really, is what we're looking at it, before we get back to hopefully what is not a new normal, but the actual normal that we had before. And I hope that that we just don't stop and just go back to the way that things were. I think yes, we want some of that, but we want to take what we learned from this, because I do hope that we're not in this position again. But if we are, what can we take from it? What can we learn from it? How can we begin to help others as well? So that's a topic for another day, but I want you to at least contemplate it, to think about it, maybe talk over with friends and family and coworkers and hey, what would you do? What can you do? How can you be better prepared? And then also, do we need to do what we did over this past year? Was it the right decision? We have to ask ourselves those things as well. And I don't have for you clear-cut answers on that. But from a health-based perspective, I've tried to share an unbiased input on many other shows as to where we were at with the virus. I gave you really 20 shows since last March, and just giving you the unbiased look, here's where we're at in March, here's where we're at in April, here's where we're at in May, and really going through it. And then understanding that so much of what we were dealing with this pandemic was out of mass media fear. And I know a lot of people don't like me saying that. And again, I understand and I respect your point of view. But we also have to look at, yes, all of it is tragic. It really is. But where are we now? Could it have been done better? Could it have been done with less fear, more help? Why wasn't the media ever talking about vitamin C? Why weren't they ever talking about vitamin D? Why weren't they ever talking about zinc and zinc ionophores? Clinically proven. Why weren't they ever talking about that? Why were they only talking about all the negatives? That troubles me. I mean, it really does. I'm okay with talking about the real world and the negatives, but let's also talk about, hey, what can we be doing? What can we do to build people up? What can we do to empower them rather than just break them down and keep them in fear? Anyway, I promised myself I wouldn't get up on my soapbox and go for a rant, and I did anyway. I can't help it. I'm just trying to serve you to the best of my ability, and I want you to be able to be a critical thinker. And you don't have to agree with the masses. And sometimes you will agree, and that's okay too. But it should be your decision. You should be able to really look at both sides of an argument and say, yeah, maybe I fall somewhere in the middle, or maybe I lean more this way or that way. And that's okay. That's your opinion. And you're entitled, absolutely, you are entitled to your opinion. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Now let's go over. Let's go over, and then we'll pull this together at the end, when some of the largest companies in the world will be asking their employees to come back into the office. And this might give you an indicator as to when we believe, meaning like the grand scheme of things will go back to, as they call, normal. All right, so before we get into those months, I'm going to give you the companies that have now gone virtual essentially forever. They've just said, going forward, we are a virtual-based company, and if we do open up our offices, it's going to be your choice whether you want to work from home or whether you want to work from the office. Now, I wanted to bring this up because this is very interesting, because this pandemic has changed the way the world economy is working. It's changed the way that we look at actually having to be in an office. Are we just as productive over Zoom or over Skype or over any other type of media, right? Our company uses Slack. Well, from the beginning, since 2017, really when 2016, 2017, where we became really a global virtual health-based practice, an integrative health-based practice helping people all over the world, we went virtual from that time. There was no office. I had two very large centers up until 2018, the very end of 2017. And it was at that point I said, we are not doing the best that we can do. Believe it or not, seeing 20,000 appointments a year is great. Again, like, I am never going to say that I wasn't grateful for that. I was. But I simply said, can I serve in a bigger way? Can I be of more help in a bigger way? And I felt that I could. And that was my goal. And so my goal was to say, how can I reach 20,000 people a day instead of 20,000 people a year? And of course, obviously, everyone's not on a specific protocol, but we now do that on a daily basis. We reach 20,000 plus people a day on the podcast, YouTube videos, etc. So that was a big goal of mine. And that's why I don't think it's bad that if people want to be able to work from home and it doesn't disrupt their life, companies allowing them to do that, I think it'd be a great thing. We probably have somewhere around 50 people on all of our different teams and all great people around the world working from their own home. And it seems to work really well for them. Now, do we get together, or do we used to get together every quarter? We did, because I love being able to interact in person as well. But here are the companies that are now going to just say, no matter what, you can work from home. Twitter, obviously big company, right? Upwork, another big company for freelancers. Coinbase, not familiar with that company. Slack, huge company that a lot of inter-offices communication happens on. Square, a big credit card processor. And Atlassian, which used to be called another company, I forget what. And part of our team actually uses that software. I do not, for scheduling and laying things out. So those companies, huge companies, probably employ, hundreds of thousands of people, all said virtual going forward. All right, because of this pandemic, they said, forget the office, you can work virtually forever going forward. All right, now here are the companies, and listen to the months. All of these are in 2021. So if I don't say 2021, assume it's 2021 coming back. This podcast is going to air on January 6th. Okay, so I'm recording this about 10 days before. This podcast comes out on January 6th. Anything can change, obviously, before that. So here's what I want to share with you. In about, let's give you the specific dates, and then we'll go through the summary of what all that is. Facebook, their employees are coming back in the office as of right now, as of last update, June 2021. Okay, Facebook, June. That's what, about 6 months from now, 5-6 months from now. Facebook, we just went over that, June 2021. Apple, the earliest is March, April. Okay, so about 12 to 16 weeks from now. Again, this came out about a month or two ago, but Apple says earliest March or April. Amazon, June 2021. Dropbox, virtual, or they're setting up Dropbox Studios, which is going to allow people in the next couple of months from Dropbox, their team, to meet up in office in these smaller, basically pods, rather than larger workspaces, which is pretty interesting. So again, they've kind of pivoted and they have these smaller spots, probably throughout the US, where people can get together and work. Salesforce, really big CRM management type software, August 2021. Slack, they are going to allow people to work virtually, and for the people who want to come into the office, they're calling this a hybrid, June 2021. Another hybrid. So essentially, Microsoft says you can work virtually, okay? We might have people meet in the office 1 day a week, just like Slack, right? So it might be 1 day a week in the office, the rest of the time virtual. So 1 day a week for meetings, the rest of the time virtual, or virtual. And the people that want to come in, potentially, and again, this was a couple months ago. I think that this is probably early, end of January 2021. Target, their employees, not in the, let's say not in the stores, but actually in the corporate offices, June 2021. Google, July 2021. Uber, inside of their corporate, of course, the drivers are in the car wearing masks, but what is Uber doing as a corporation? June 2021. Airbnb, again, not the actual Airbnb homes, but Airbnb, the corporate employees are back in the office August 2021. Netflix, Reed Hastings actually just stated, this is not too long ago, that he says that until vaccinations are either mandated or enough people get them or somehow we get to herd immunity, whatever it might be, whatever they feel comfortable with, the offices will be closed until then. So it's basically indefinite for Netflix, unless they've changed things, until they get to a spot where they feel that they've reached, we as a global community have reached herd immunity. Okay. Shopify, mid-2021. So we'll say mid, what is that? May, June, July, August, somewhere around there. Let's just say June, July, Shopify, back in the office. All right. So before that, some of these did say they were open to 1 day a week or partial teams coming in, but not filling the entire office. So if I just read those to you quickly, we're looking at Facebook in June, Apple, March, April, Amazon, June, Salesforce, August, Slack, June, Microsoft, late January, potentially, Target, June, Google, July, Uber, June, Airbnb, August, and Shopify, June, July, maybe. So if you look at all of those, again, these are all big corporations, well over millions of employees across all of them. They are all saying June or July. If you just look at that average, it's going to be June or July, right? That means definitely June, July. So we say to ourselves, well, and again, I was optimistic with saying that I believe that we are out of this in April. I've said that I've said that since August, of last year, honestly. Like, I've been saying that, and here's why. Mine is based as a clinician. So there's two different types of people in the world, and we need both in terms of health. There are PhDs that are essentially epidemiologists and virologists, and they work in a lab. So they're actually looking at the virus, they're looking at all these different things, they're looking at previous research studies, and that's what they're an expert in. So they're an expert basically in reading the research, and they're in a lab. And then we have clinicians who are the integrative health practitioners, the naturopathic doctors, the functional medicine doctors, MDs, people that are in the field working with patients and wellness clients. So I believe we need both, right? I read the research, and then people like myself are also saying, hey, let's look into this for research. So it's a really nice circle, and that's why I love the health field. I really do. So how did I get April from me? Okay, and again, this is not, I'm not giving you like, hey, this is the definite date, because we don't know. Why am I saying April? Here's why. In April, we will have gone essentially a full year. It doesn't mean that a virus automatically dies out in a full year. I'm not saying that at all. But what we've done is we've gone through the full winter, which is always the worst time of the year for a virus. It's always the worst time of the year. We already know there's less vitamin D. There's less sunlight. We already know scientifically that UV rays do kill the virus, no matter how much the media likes to make fun of that. It's actually true. It's science-based. And we know that vitamin D is helpful in what happens. Well, there's not a whole lot of vitamin D for people above essentially the Atlanta, Georgia line, or for anybody not getting a tan. I don't want to say like, a lot of people are like, well, you know, I get enough vitamin D, it's summertime here. Yes, maybe you do, but if you're not getting a tan, you're not getting enough vitamin D. And you might say, well, I don't want to get a tan because it damages my skin. Then that's your prerogative to say that, but you don't get enough vitamin D if you don't have a tan. That's how things work. So that means you need to then supplement with vitamin D. There's only one or the other. Get it from the sun, or I'm actually trying out the spurty light right now, but it's still the same UVB rays. So, I mean, you're still getting it as if it was the sunlight. It's just for short spurts instead of actually getting a tan from it. You're just trying to absorb the vitamin D or get the vitamin D that's manufactured essentially on your skin that's then processes vitamin D in the body. So, or you can take a supplement. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's one or the other, but you have to check your levels to make sure you're getting it. But anyway, flu season dies down by March. Okay, so in April, it's pretty much done. Now, it's very interesting because this year already, and again, like this blows my mind. It blows my mind. Like, oh, flu cases down unbelievably, unexpectedly because of all of these precautions that we're taking. I just want to share with you, and again, I can't give you the science yet to back this up, but we have to use critical thinking, especially as clinicians and other people that are PhDs. The flu's never been down. The flu has never been down in the last, let's say, decade, okay? We're looking at typically 40 to 80,000 cases a year just in the US, okay? 40 to 80,000, sorry, not cases, 40 to 80,000 deaths per year just in the US, okay? We're looking at well over 500,000 cases just in the US, okay? So we have to understand, it's not down, it's being classified differently. I mean, and anybody that is not looking at that is choosing not to look at it. The flu doesn't go away because we now have this virus. They're two different viruses. And so what we have to understand is we can call it one or the other, but the good news is this. Remember, silver lining. The good news is this. We will hopefully have herd immunity by end of March, April. No matter what, flu cases are going to be down. The sun is going to start coming out. Is it bright enough for where I am in Boston? No, it's not. But for the lower half of the country, it will be. And more sunlight, more people breathing fresh air, more people getting vitamin D means less sickness. We've already seen the science saying that those people with higher levels of vitamin D do far better with this virus. That's not hearsay. It's not conjecture. It's fact, right? So I only want to bring you the facts. So if people aren't using vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc right now, it's just get right on that. It's maybe $3 a day maximum, maybe, and it can protect your health. Am I saying that it's going to stop the virus? I'm not. What I'm saying is that your symptoms will most likely be less and it will be less severe. And I've done research. I've given you the research on that before. So I wanted to share this with you. I said April. Now I wonder if the corporations also believe that April, May, and that's why they're giving themselves another month or two buffer. Or maybe they're privy to something I don't know. Maybe it very likely will last until April or May. They have to give themselves at least a 1 month buffer. So I really believe that most people think it's going to end in April then. They give themselves May as the buffer, and then they're back in the office in June. So if you were being conservative, you would say, okay, this is going to end then in May. Meaning, what does end mean? It means that cases go down dramatically, less than, let's say, 500 per day, right? Less than that, maybe even less than that. Because we're looking at thousands per day now. So now we need to find a number that's very small, hundreds a day. That's it. Okay, so now basically, as they say, the curve has been flattened, all of that. We're basically at herd immunity. The majority of people that need to get it have gotten it. By need to get it, I mean enough to create herd immunity for this particular virus. It changes based on the virus itself. And then corporations feel comfortable about having people come into the office. So I would say, again, if I was a betting person, which I'm not, but if I was a betting person, I would say April, May, we are out of this, which is good news. Yes, it's much longer than we would like, but hopefully by late spring, we are out of this. The summertime, I hope that things are back to normal. Corporations that want to be open are opening. People feel they've gone back to some level of normalcy, and that we can, again, begin to rebuild, because there is certainly there is, and surely there is a big rebuilding. There is. I mean, people have to reacclimate to even being back in the office after being out for a year. People need to figure out, like, what are they doing now for childcare or not childcare? Like what is going on? I mean, all of this really matters. It goes on to so many levels, from small businesses to large businesses to all these different things that are happening right now in our society. So again, I wanted to bring this show to you. I still believe we will be out of this sometime in April. Maybe it's May. Okay, maybe it's May or so. And at the latest, it looks like with these companies, they're saying June, even the ones that are betting on July and August, which again, the majority said June. And they're just not going to say, oh, well, things just stopped today, let's get back in the office. I think it has to be down for at least a month. So again, if I was a betting person, I would say this virus will end. We will be out of it by April, May. I'm optimistic. I've felt that way for a long time. We will see if it happens. It certainly doesn't look like we're on that trajectory right now, but you do have to understand, if you were in the middle of flu season and you just looked at it, you wouldn't believe it either until it did. All of a sudden, it just ends. It just drops out dramatically in March, and that's why I do believe by April we'll be in. Hopefully, we'll all be in better spirits, and I'm keeping myself optimistic. I hope that this was helpful. Again, I'll link up to that Forbes article and a few others today at stephencabral.com/1797. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, and I will talk with you tomorrow.